Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about and continue this series, Liturgical Abuses That Drive Me Crazy, and talk about my experience at a parish on an island in Washington State. Now before we begin, let's start with the prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti, Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, secutor in principio, et nunc et semper, et secula seculorum. Amen. So I like coming to the Pacific Northwest on occasion. I haven't come here since 2020 in June of COVID tide. That was a good time. I was on the Olympic Peninsula and flight was dead and there's no tourists because it was during that time. But coming from very dry, hot Texas, I love the Pacific Northwest. I'm not saying I would live here because the winters are pretty brutal, but I do like coming here. So I came here for some blue therapy, being around water, and green therapy. I just love the verdancy of the Pacific Northwest compared to where I come from. So, we have this series, Liturgical Abuses That Drive Me Crazy, and we haven't done an episode in quite some time. I think the last one we did was when I recorded about the cathedral in Chicago, Cardinal Supich's cathedral, and how there's just so many weird things about that place that I didn't really particularly find endearing as a traditional Catholic. So I'm here. I'm recording this Sunday evening of October 12th, 13th. And I went to a parish, a Catholic parish here on an island. I'll keep it nondescript because I don't want to offend anyone's sensibilities. But it was the only parish I could go to because it's on an island. And I do want to talk about first the positives and then some questionable things. First, if you're not familiar with the Pacific Northwest, Cascadia as they like to call it, this is probably the most irreligious part of the country. And I think many of you know it's also very politically, radically left. And I mean, I've seen more gay pride flags than American flags, 5-1, easily. And so it's not surprising that as a whole, this is not like Nebraska or Kansas or some bastion of traditional Catholicism. This is going to be an area where there's just not a lot of Catholic representation, active Catholic representation, and whatnot. So please understand that as a backdrop. So with a place a region that is known to be pretty liberal, you're not going to get a lot of, or I should say you're going to get a lot of the lex orandi, lex credendi, lex vivendi, meaning that how the comportment at Mass is really going to be correlated to your belief in the faith. And so I want to start with the positive. So this parish, look, it had a crucifix with a tabernacle underneath it. Look, I'm starting at minimals, okay? It had that. It had a Mary statue and a Joseph statue, okay? Positives. Had statues. No stained glass, okay? Had statues. And I will say this, the community was close, and I understand this. You know, when you live on an island where maybe there's 30,000 people and you're the only Catholic parish, everybody knows everybody. So you could definitely tell that there was fellowship. The pastor is probably 70, 75 years old, and he's the masters of ceremony kind of priest that I've talked about before in the past, where they got to, it's more like it's the show, let's keep everyone engaged. And certainly, indubitably, this was a very horizontal church, which I knew going into it, by just looking at the pictures, knowing where I was going, that this was not going to be a very vertical church. So you could definitely sense the horizontal nature. So first of all, just a couple of, and I mean these in charity. If it sounds like I'm making fun of this place, I'm not. There's genuine fellowship at this place. As expected, look, when you try to make a church, Catholic church, very horizontal in nature, many times it works if the people want it to be horizontal in nature. When you're having people forced to be horizontal in their worship, that's where you have the problems. But this place, I think they liked it because the mindset of the ethos of this part of the country is very horizontal. So first of all, it was a child's baptism. So we start the Mass. I would say the church is very small. I would say about 65% full. They only had an 8 a.m. and a 10 a.m. and this was the 10 a.m. I had to walk 45 minutes to get there because I don't have a car. So it was the old very like, my granddad walked 6 miles to go to Mass. Anyway, so at the beginning of Mass, he had everybody turn and go to the baptismal font or look at the baptismal font because it was in the back of the church. It was one of those big ones. and he, gave some speech. The parents were there, the godparents, and then he processed with the parents with the Gloria, which I never seen. We sang the Gloria after he did. He started the Mass with the sign of the cross at the baptismal font, and then we processed in with the Gloria, or they processed in with the Gloria. And I thought, okay, that's pretty peculiar. Then there's no penitential rite. There's no Confiteor, there's no Kyrie eleison, there's nothing like that. And I was like, oh, already we're having an illicit Mass. It wouldn't be invalid, but it'd be illicit. So that was kind of strange. Then we get to, before Mass started, so I got there early because I like to pray my rosaries. On Sundays, I do the 7 Sorrows of Mary. It was just loud. People just talking. I mean, there's no sense of reverence in this Mass. Just talking is normal. Very horizontal. Again, this is like, if you've ever been to a Protestant megachurch, they'll be drinking Starbucks and stuff during the service, much less the beginning. So it's just, kind of that ethos. So we get to the responsorial psalm, and it was a couple who sang it in harmony. 2 people came up to the lector booth and sang it. It reminded me of that skit. It was Anna Gasteyer, Will Ferrell, where they would sing they'd be the karaoke couple, the piano couple, the duo on Saturday Night Live. But I thought that was peculiar. And then we get to the homily. The homily was short. It was on the parable of the 10 lepers, which is probably my favorite parable. I just love that parable about the gratitude, right? But it's very short. Then afterwards, he does the baptism, okay? There's a lot of parishes that do baptisms in the middle of the Mass. He does the baptism. Okay, this is where it gets a little wonky. So first, before he brings the couple and the godparents to the front of the church, and then he has them process with him all through the church, and everybody's got their hands up, blessing them. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, guys, you're all shooting blanks here in this case. But either way, so I never seen that where you process the couples, the couple with the baby around the entire church. Then he goes to the baptismal font, which I'm next to because I was sitting in the very back row. Then he baptizes the child. It's pretty irreverent. And then, of course, everybody claps, everybody goes back. And then during the baptism is when we did the renewal of our baptismal vows. So at least we had that, because that does count, if I remember correctly, as part of the penitential rite. You can do the Confiteor, or you can do that, or you can renew your baptismal vows. So I think that was okay. So then we get to the Eucharistic prayers, and this priest just running through that Eucharistic prayer, probably number 2, really fast. So what I noticed was, during the elevation, it was the shortest elevation I had ever seen, when you lift up the body and blood of Christ. And he did have acolytes, and they rang that bell like 2 seconds, ding, 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 and he held it up. This is my body given up for you. I mean, just super short, just super cash. And I went back to that episode. I did 5 ways you know that your priest takes his job seriously, and one of them was he takes his time, especially in the Eucharistic prayers. He takes his time in that period before the final blessing. Either way, this guy was pretty fast. Then, when it came to distribute the Eucharist, I was not in a state of grace, but I kind of knew, going into this, is there's probably going to be no chapel veils, no one's receiving kneeling, no one's receiving on the tongue, or few. And I pretty much saw that. Now, I wasn't looking at everybody because I was trying to pray, because that's the time I do certain Sunday prayers. But, I was glancing, and I did not see one chapel veiled person. And I would say the age in this church was all age. I mean, there were people in their 20s, 30s, 40s in there. Because, again, couples, this is the only parish. But no one was going that way. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but it's just an observation. So then, afterwards, after the chalice and the pat and everything is cleaned, everybody sits when the priest is still standing. See, where I come from, you don't sit until the priest sits. But either way, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily makes it invalid or anything like that. Then he sits, and as soon as he sits, he got right back up. And then, okay, so I was not surprised by this. We had the master of ceremony time, birthdays, anniversaries, but this was a newbie. So he did weekly birthdays and weekly anniversaries. So who's got a birthday this week? Stand up. Oh, Bob, Deborah. And then again, everybody's holding their hands. Quick prayer for the weekly anniversaries, the weekly birthdays. And then as soon as the song that went out, we pull out the tambourine. I don't need to explain that the music during this Mass was going to be what we expected to be. I hadn't heard the tambourine in some time, so it was very tambourine-y. They were playing the tambourine, and then the baptized child with the parents and godparents processed out. The priest stayed behind, so the crucifix, which was it wasn't a resurrected Jesus, it was an awake corpus, processed out with the family, but he stayed behind. And then as soon as that corpus left, I had never seen so many people leave the sanctuary so fast. It was just like, they just bolted out of there like there was no business. Now, there were coffee and donuts, but they were just gone. And so I found this church, like, it wasn't surprising, but this is one of the reasons why I like to travel, because I've seen a lot of, just kind of strange masses. And this is one of the beauties of traveling, is you get to go to another region and just see how they do their Mass. And God bless this place, because I do feel that they have a very kind of authentic community there. Now, from a traditional Catholic perspective, it's a lot like a lot of Cascadia. If you know any trad Catholics that live in this area, it's very isolating and alienating. There is a TLM, for example, in Portland, but as a whole, if you're trying to be a practicing Catholic, it's very difficult in this region, because even the Catholics, if you look at Lex Orandi, Lex Credendi, Lex Vivendi, I would hazard a guess that the majority of self-identifying Catholics up here would agree with 100% of the Church's teaching. I could be wrong. I would say that I think that percentage of people is pretty small, because I think your politics bleed into your religion many times. And when you live in a place that has such progressive, liberal views, it can't help to bleed in to your faith as a whole. But I just thought the biggest novelty was processing the baptized couple and everyone doing that. And I just thought, and then the weekly birthdays and anniversaries, those two I had never seen before. And God bless this church. I think it's unique. It's certainly not a parish that I would want to go to weekly, but at least there was a community. And when you horizontalize the Mass and you make it more about a fellowship, maybe in an attempt to get Protestants to go there, or you just love the spirit of Vatican II. Like, this guy definitely had the love of the spirit of Vatican II. You take away, of course, the reverence, the solemnity. How many people in there really knew that the Mass was a holy sacrifice? I doubt. A lot of them did. I really doubt. But I would say that the majority of them seem very happy at this parish. And God bless them. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. So take care.